Happy Thursday, everybody. It is the second day that teachers have reported in my district, and I am super excited to be continuing to do this work. I've really made a commitment to give this a try, and I'm glad that you're back with me today. So thank you for being here, and let's get started. This week's text is John Muth's with a document camera, John Muth's The Three Questions. And today's Write Like routine, I feel like is really as relevant as the Write About routine was on Tuesday. I picked this book because it transcends time. It's been told and retold for over 100 years, and the questions that are in it are very relevant. The answers that we get, I feel like are sit well in my heart. And I feel like this is something we could all use to hear at this time. So for today's lesson, we're going to spend some time kind of fluidly in the steps for the Write Like routine. So we'll start in step 1. We'll kind of skip across step 2 into step 3, and then that try it or that craft, that imitation rather, that Write Like will kind of occur throughout the entire thing. So as I've made the routine very linear, as you can see it on the blog, but today we're going to really just let it flow as we work to write in the style of John Muth, who originally borrowed this story from Leo Tolstoy. So with that, here's our target. I can write like an author by noticing the topics and craft moves they choose so that I can discover ways to tell my own story. And I feel like the work that we're going to do today, I'm hoping people will engage with either on Facebook or on the blog so that we can really just have an opportunity to play around with this style using topics that are relevant to us today. So with that in mind, let's talk about some of the topics that emerge in the text. And I'm going to go ahead and show you what I can see just so that we are all on the same page literally today. So if you have the text excerpt from the blog, it is the beginning and the end. We're going to focus on the beginning, so that very first page, and I believe even just that very first column, where Nikolai originally introduces us to the questions, and you can see it here. In the text, I want to show you what it looks like, because I think we're going to try and imitate that a little bit too. But let's start first with topics. So this page is one of my favorites because it just isolates the questions so nicely. And I want us to think, like, what are the kinds of questions that Leo Tolstoy and John Muth introduced us to in this story? So take a look here. He's got, when is the best time to do things? Who is the most important one? What is the right thing to do? And I think if we were going to name, like, what are those kinds of questions, we might call them like essential questions, right? If I were building out a unit of study, this would be like a guiding question. Kylene and Bob would call it maybe a tough question, a question that a character is grappling with through the plot line of a story. We might also call these moral questions, right? They are implied in them is this idea of should. When is the best time to do things? That means there's a wrong time to do things or a worse time to do things. Who is the most important one? That kind of gives us a rank or a tier system or a hierarchy. And then what is the right thing to do also implies that there's a wrong thing to do, right? So I feel like this is particularly relevant for this time. And I want us to just take a few minutes, and I encourage you to do this with me. In your notebook, I've just kind of jotted down what I refer to as the shoulds. That's kind of what these questions imply to me, is that there's a shoulda, coulda, woulda. And then I want to give us an opportunity to brainstorm some of those questions. So think about some of the things that are brewing on social media or in your own world, at your own household, at the dinner table, those kinds of questions that really have multiple perspectives and that we're really grappling with. So if I were to borrow John's cues, the first one is, when is the right time to do things? And I might say, when is the right time for kids to return to school? As I'm writing these, you might borrow the question I'm writing. You might originate new questions, generate new questions. So feel free, grab that notebook if you haven't already and jot some questions of your own or borrow mine. If I were going to model after his second question, which is it the who question or the what question? What is the most important? Let's see. Who is the most important one is his second question. So let's borrow that one. Do we have any who questions? I'm wondering. Who should, who, and I love that he actually doesn't use the word should. Who is the most important one? That's actually a really good question. I could jot that one down. Who should be making decisions about starting school? Can you tell that I'm back to work and that these are the kinds of questions that we're toiling over? Our school board just met this morning. Our union is in negotiations right now. Like, this is the stuff that's really front and center in my life right now. If it's not in yours, I totally appreciate, and I would love to hear your perspective. All right, so who should be making decisions about startup? Maybe I'll just kind of abbreviate it that way. And then John's last question, what is the right thing to do? I think I could even just borrow that. I might even just take it out of the context of school for a minute, because I have a couple of ideas that I've been playing around with since I got back from my road trip. What is the right way to spend our leisure time? So if you notice, mine are a lot less transcendental, a lot less ethereal, right? A lot less otherworldly or universal, maybe is the word I'm looking for. Mine are a lot more specific to my setting. And I feel like that's a really cool idea to try, right? Our target, remember, is to discover ways to share our own stories with the world. And so this story is giving me a place where I can give that a go. So with that in mind, I'm going to kind of walk us through step 2, which is the work, which really, as we move into the next phase of John Muth's story, is to consider multiple perspectives. And I feel like we're not short on multiple perspectives on the coulda, shoulda, wouldas of COVID and what we should all be doing right now. I feel like everybody has an opinion about what everybody else should be doing. And the people who are trying to make decisions for themselves and their families are just like caught in this impossible place. So with that in mind, let's move on to craft, because I want you to notice what happens here. And I am going to keep it in the context of the book here. I want you to notice that John Muth here isolates each of the 3 friends, Nikolai's 3 friends. So Nikolai's friends considered his first question. Then Sonia the heron spoke. She speaks first in all 3 scenarios. She says, to know the best time to do things, one must plan in advance, she said. And I think as you look at how she's standing there, the illustration is really perfect. She's standing there nice and tall, very proud. I might be this person in this case. Like, let's get a good plan in place. I have friends and coworkers that would be this person, right? Then we move over to Gogol the monkey, who had been rooting through some leaves to find something good to eat, right? Like, he hasn't stopped doing what he's doing. He says, you will know when to do things if you watch and pay close attention. So these are the people who are maybe constantly involved already, constantly working. Then we've got Pushkin the dog, who was just dozing off. He rolled over and said, you can't pay attention to everything yourself. You need a pack to keep watch and help you decide when to do things. For example, Gogol, a coconut is about to fall on your head. And I think about these might be the people who rally their troops around, right? Who attend to people in their emotions and are empathic in their experience. I'm not sure that I would hang on to that, as Pushkin then says something later on about the most important people are the ones who make the rules, or the most important thing to do is to fight. That was his kind of line, but it fits who he is as a dog, right? So craft-wise, John Muth has shown us 3 different perspectives, and they are consistent with the characters he's chosen to play them, and they are consistent then throughout the answering of the 3 questions. So with that in mind, I want to think about, let me just play around with one of my questions. And in my notebook, in order to kind of capture that craft move, I've created 3 columns. So I'm not today in this session going to play around with attaching an animal or a stereotype or an archetype to each character. I really just am going to focus on getting the perspective down. If that's something you want to play around with and and kind of go into that allegory and parable that John captures so well, feel free. That's the whole idea, right? Is to write like him, and whatever craft move you see that compels you forward, I want you to snatch it up and give it a go. But for me right now, I might say, I'm going to borrow this first question. I feel like it's one that I could readily grab 3 perspectives on. So when is the right time for kids to return to school? And I might say, when cases, and I would add COVID cases have been on the decline. I might even start before that. Like, this is the scientific answer, right? When cases have been on the decline for 14 days and no new cases have been reported. Now, I might have to do a little research because I'm not sure I'm capturing the scientific opinion very well, because I do think like our neighboring district has a very clear metric for how they will decide whether kids go back. But ideally, this is like the not yet opinion, right? Then I could do like the opinion of, this is the opinion of my district right now, our district leadership, as far as I know, unless a decision was made this morning, that students will return to school after Labor Day. They're going to be in remote learning until then, but they will appear in the building if they so choose after Labor Day. And I'm going to say we'll phase them in over several weeks with clear mitigation procedures, right? This is somebody else's opinion. And then it was interesting. I was on Facebook the other day, and something that my aunt, who I rarely ever see, posted caught my eye, because it was like it was a dig a little bit. It wasn't personal to me, but it was just something she reposted that said something like, if we expect grocery store workers to be back and seeing over 80 people an hour come through the checkout line, teachers should have been back for weeks. So I might say that for weeks. And the point of the post was that science is no longer in control of us making these decisions, right? So it really kind of hurt, because I know she wasn't considering my context and my family and those things when she reposted it, but it is a perspective that's out there, right? I'm seeing some, for lack of a better word, propaganda videos of teachers who are really making the most of being back in the building. And I am with you in every way possible. And I think this is going to lead us into the closure for today's lesson really well. So for weeks, and then I might just say, so long as grocery workers are back, teachers and kids should be back. And I know there's been some debate in the last week about kids and their susceptibility to the virus. I know that's been in debate since the beginning. So here's the thing. Here's the craft I really want us to pay attention to. And I probably should have mentioned it earlier so that you wouldn't go away without it if you've lost your energy for this lesson yet. But I hope you've stayed with me. Here's the next part that I really want to include in mine, and I encourage you to use in yours as well. So after John introduces each of the 3 questions, right, and then gives the characters a chance to answer all 3, here's what he says. Then the boy thought for a long while. He loved his friends. He knew they were all trying their best to help him answer his questions, but their answers didn't seem quite right. The story goes on that an idea came to him. I know, he thought, I'll ask Leo the turtle. So if this were mine and I were crafting, I'm just going to kind of write it in the air here. I might say, then I thought for a long while. My family has thought for a long while. Then we debated at the dinner table. I love all of the people who are giving me advice right now. I love my aunt. I love my friends who I see more on Facebook now than I see in person. I love the people who are working at the Ed Center right now, who used to work alongside me in classrooms and teaching teachers. Like those people, I care a lot about them. And I know we are all trying our best to answer these questions in the right way, even if the answers don't seem quite right. It's okay. Now, ideally, we would all turn the corner and say, I know, we'll just go ask so-and-so. They'll know what to do. And hopefully you have somebody in your life who's helping to kind of guide your thinking and guide your thoughts in a way that you respect and admire. And I feel like we're going to get an opportunity to be that for each other. So with that in mind, I encourage you to play around with this. I feel like the idea that came to me as I was doing this exercise today was the idea that, number one, there are multiple perspectives for tough questions, right? Everybody has their own opinion and their own way of answering them, and it doesn't make any one answer right or wrong. The second thing I really want us to walk away with is that we can love those people who have different perspectives, even because of and in spite of those that don't feel right to us, and we can continue to seek the right answers for ourselves. I would love for you to share your right like with me. And if you decide to take your story all the way to the end where Leo gives us the answers to our questions, please, please, please share. We all need your wisdom and your guidance as we move forward together. Thank you for joining me today. Happy Thursday, everybody. Stay strong.